The fish oil industry sells $4 billion a year in omega-3. This plant, growing through sidewalk cracks, contains 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams, 14 times more than spinach. It is the richest omega-3 source of any leafy green ever tested. Americans spray it with herbicide, plant it once in a bucket, and harvest for months. Civilizations on 4 continents knew this for millennia, so who erased it and why? Carbonized purslane seeds, pressed into the mud of ancient irrigation ditches, surfaced at Tel al-Ubaid in southern Mesopotamia. Radiocarbon dating places these remains around 2100 BCE, confirming that early farmers in the cradle of civilization recognized and cultivated this resilient succulent alongside barley and wheat. The archaeological record leaves little doubt. Purslane was not a late arrival or accidental weed, but a deliberate part of the Bronze Age diet. In the Mediterranean, Greek botanist Theophrastus described a low-lying herb with tender leaves and succulent stems, gathered for food in warm, dry places. His Enquiry into Plants, written around 320 BCE, names portulaca as both a famine food and a culinary green. Theophrastus's account is echoed by later Roman sources, but it is his detailed observation of the plant's taste, texture, and use that anchors purslane in the classical botanical canon. Across the continent, Chinese herbalists writing in the Shennong Ben Cao Jing, compiled during the early centuries of the Common Era, included purslane under the name Ma Qi Xian. It was classified among herbs that relieve heat and treat dysentery, and it became a staple in the Tang Dynasty pharmacopoeia. The plant's value was not limited to food. It was recognized for its medicinal properties and prescribed as a remedy for skin eruptions and digestive complaints. By the 11th century, Avicenna's Canon of Medicine listed farfahin, the Persian name for purslane, as a cooling agent recommended for heat-related ulcers and inflammatory conditions. Avicenna's text, completed in 1025 CE, became a reference across Islamic and later European medicine, cementing purslane's reputation as both food and therapy. The plant's authority was not regional, but global, spanning Mesopotamian irrigation fields, Greek gardens, Chinese apothecaries, and Persian clinics. Such a broad historical footprint stands in stark contrast to its near invisibility today. Ottoman market ledgers from the 18th century record semizotu, purslane, sold by the kilogram in Istanbul's bustling bazaars, priced at 2 AKC per kilo. This was not a rare herb, but a staple, bought and sold alongside parsley and dill. In Mexico, colonial tax records from 1790 list verdolagas as a regular entry, foraged from riverbanks and carried to market stalls in woven baskets. Rural households relied on these sour greens to stretch stews and fill tortillas, a tradition that persists in parts of the country today. In early America, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello Garden Book, dated 1809, includes a simple note. Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, sow late summer. The leaves are good for salad. Jefferson, a meticulous gardener, chose to plant purslane not as a curiosity, but as a valued green, well suited to the Virginia climate. His garden notebook sits alongside colonial tax ledgers and Ottoman price lists, each document quietly affirming purslane's place at the table. By the middle of the 20th century, the Rockefeller Foundation's 1948 survey of Cretan households found purslane on the menu at least 3 times a week. Families who ate it regularly showed markedly lower rates of coronary disease than those who did not. The researchers linked this pattern to the plant's abundance of unsaturated fatty acids and antioxidants, a connection that would take decades for the wider world to rediscover. From Ottoman traders to Mexican foragers, Jefferson's garden to Cretan kitchens, purslane was not a weed but a familiar food, woven into everyday life, traded, eaten, and trusted. Its steady presence across centuries stands in sharp contrast to its sudden disappearance in the decades that followed. The mid-20th century brought a decisive turn against purslane, not through culinary preference, but by the force of policy and chemical innovation. In 1949, the Agricultural Act redefined the American landscape, channeling subsidies toward corn, wheat, and soy, while relegating so-called non-crop weeds to official targets for eradication. The United States Department of Agriculture followed suit. In 1956, Bulletin No. 629, issued by the Agricultural Research Service, classified Portulaca oleracea, a plant once valued from Mesopotamia to Monticello, as a noxious weed. The bulletin's language was direct. Purslane, described as a rapidly spreading annual, was now subject to mandatory control, with pre-emergent herbicides such as 2,4-D recommended for residential lawns and farm fields alike. This new regime was not limited to policy. By the early 1960s, agrochemical companies like Scott's Miracle-Gro and Dow Chemical launched nationwide campaigns for 2,4-D, a synthetic auxin designed to eliminate broadleaf plants. Advertising materials from 1962 explicitly named purslane among the unwanted species, encouraging homeowners and farmers to pursue uniform, weed-free turf. Extension agents, armed with the USDA bulletin, promoted these herbicides as scientific progress, reinforcing the idea that any plant outside the industrial crop system was an invader. Through these legal and chemical instruments, purslane was systematically erased from fields, gardens, and public consciousness. The groundwork was laid for a market that would later sell omega-3 in capsules, while the original source was written out of the landscape. By the 1970s, a quiet but sweeping transformation was underway in the American food and health landscape. The global fish oil supplement market, worth less than $200 million in 1975, ballooned to over $4 billion by 2005. Omega-3, once a nutrient available for free in fields and gardens, was now packaged, branded, and sold by multinational supplement conglomerates. This commercial surge coincided with a striking silence in the kitchen. A survey of 30 major American cookbooks published during the 1970s, titles like The Joy of Cooking and The Betty Crocker Cookbook, found not a single indexed entry for purslane or verdolagas. Editors who once celebrated wild greens shifted focus to spinach, kale, and collards, leaving purslane to vanish from the home cook's repertoire. The absence was not limited to the bookshelf. In 1971, the American Association of Medical Colleges issued new curriculum guidelines that quietly eliminated wild edible nutrition from medical education, deeming it irrelevant in an age of pharmaceuticals. Internal memos from the period reveal a deliberate move away from traditional dietary knowledge, further erasing purslane from the collective memory of future physicians. Economic incentives, editorial choices, and educational reforms all converged to transform an accessible, nutrient-rich plant into a forgotten weed, while the business of omega-3 moved from soil to the supplement aisle. In 1990, Artemis Simopoulos published findings that fresh purslane contains about 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams, 4 times the alpha-linolenic acid in spinach. Gas chromatography with flame ionization detection confirmed these numbers, and USDA-linked studies have since repeated them across climates and cultivars. Purslane's nutritional profile does not stop at omega-3. A 2014 review in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirmed high levels of betalain pigments, glutathione, and melatonin. In 2020, Nutrients published assays showing 0.9 milligrams of betalains, 12 micromoles of glutathione, and 5 nanograms of melatonin per gram, an antioxidant combination rarely matched by other edible plants. Clinical evidence is equally striking. In 2016, a randomized controlled trial in Tehran tracked adults with type 2 diabetes. After 12 weeks of daily purslane, fasting glucose dropped by 18% compared to placebo. The study's design met international standards, making the Tehran team's results a clinical milestone. Fatty acid balance matters as well. A 2019 analysis by the University of Texas found purslane's omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is 1:2, a healthy contrast to the typical Western imbalance. The numbers are clear. Purslane's relevance is no longer in question. A 5-gallon food-grade bucket, a quart of potting mix, and half a gram of purslane seed, these are all it takes to revive a forgotten source of omega-3. The cost stays under $15, with supplies found at any hardware store or online seed catalog. Drill drainage holes in the bucket, fill with moist seed starting mix, and scatter the seeds thinly on top. Press gently. Purslane needs light to sprout. At room temperature, seedlings emerge in 3 to 5 days. Place the bucket in a sunny spot and water lightly. By day 25, the first harvest is ready. Pinch off the tender tops, leaving half an inch of stem, and the plant branches for more. One bucket yields 6 to 8 harvests, producing up to 4 kilograms in 12 weeks, enough to supply a household with fresh greens rich in alpha-linolenic acid. Seed packets from reputable sources like Baker Creek or Restoration Seeds provide more than enough for several buckets. Purslane thrives in USDA zones 5 through 11, from city balconies to backyard patios. Like spinach, it contains moderate oxalates. Most people can safely eat under 100 grams each day, but those with a history of kidney stones should consume it with calcium. Today, most Americans overlook purslane while paying billions for omega-3 in capsules. Policy, profit, and perception erased a plant that once fed civilizations. The root, however, remembers what the market forgot. As knowledge returns to the soil, even a bucket can challenge the silence of an industry. Share your thoughts below.